welcome to Overdrive. You're watching the show with me, Soini Das. It's been a week of firsts. BMW has just launched their first ever 2 Series Gran Coupe in the country, starting at 39.3 lakh rupees for the Sportline trim, and it goes up to 41.1 lakh rupees for the M Sport trim. We did think before the car was launched that it would be the most affordable BMW that you can buy in the country today, but it has been priced close to the X1, so that isn't really, so it's a tad bit expensive. But Rohit gets you his review to let you know whether it's worth all that money.
We've often said this, the Indian market works in its own unique way, which also means that what may work in the global market may not necessarily appeal to India. One of the best examples of this fact is the compact luxury segment. Now, we don't usually associate luxury with the hatchback body style, which is the reason why the A-Class or the 1 Series didn't do too well. Then there was the CLA, that beautiful 4-door coupe body style, but even that didn't appeal to the Indians the way Mercedes-Benz hoped it would. Now, that is one of the reasons why the new CLA is nowhere on the roadmap for Mercedes-Benz India. What they have coming instead is the A-Class limousine, because they believe that there is space and there's more appeal for the classic 3-box sedan body style. But then again, the Audi A3 was a classic sedan that only made that initial splash and then just disappeared into the blind spot of the Indian clientele. But so did the A4. So let's just blame that on the design. BMW thinks that they can do better at this body style. In fact, BMW knows how to handle the entry-level clientele. They have done this quite successfully. They have the entire Mini lineup to address this particular client. They have the BMW X1, which is the best-selling crossover in this segment. And now they think that this addition, a 4-door Gran Coupe, could also appeal to many. Say hello to the new BMW 2 Series. The 2 Series is a new model line for India, but in the BMW universe, this is the second generation of it. Despite marrying the styling cues of the 8 Series Gran Coupe to the compact size derived from the 1 Series hatchback, the 2GC has ended up looking quite blunt, and the face has a very upright and chubby appearance to it. Blame it to the Z4 or 8 Series inspired headlights, the detailing of which makes them look more vertical than horizontal. Adding further to that effect is the kidney grille, which sits lower than the headlamps. I can't believe I'm saying this, and don't call me a hypocrite for saying this, but I think this is one of those BMWs which would actually look better with a larger and a wider grille on it. I also feel that the bonnet shut line should have been set a little forward, a little more discreetly than what it is right now. And a final bit of complaint is with the headlamp. While they look fine from where you are looking, but from the side profile or the rear 3/4, it's got that ungainly bulge to it, much like the CLA. The side profile has balanced visual proportions, and with the 18-inch wheels and the fat 225 section tires, it even looks like a premium sedan. I think the best angle to view the 2 Series from is the rear 3/4. It looks like a proper sports sedan fit to wear that Bavarian roundel. Of course, there are those big air dams, all that sporty drama that's happening up front with those M Sport bits. But I think even with its simplistic styling, even with the lack of all that drama, the tail end looks a lot sportier than the front. The rear looks dramatic in its own way, with the 2 functional exhaust barrels, the sleek diffuser, the even sleeker tail lights, and the gloss black applique running between them. The conventional boot lid hides away a sizable 430 litres of cargo space and has a 40-20-40 split on the foldable seats for additional space or versatility. And despite the coupe roofline, ingress and egress is actually not a problem at all. Of course, for taller passengers, this is going to be a bit of a squeeze, but for my height of 5'8", the headroom is actually not quite bad. I have about 2 inches of space over my head. Of course, like most coupes, there's a bit of space that is scooped out here, but you can only fit 2 adults and a kid in here because the panoramic sunroof doesn't extend all the way to the back, and yet you have a nice and airy feel in here. Now, in terms of the space, foot space is quite good. Knee room is excellent. This driver seat is set to my driving preference, and under thigh support is not bad at all. The rear seat gets 2 USB-C ports and AC vents too, but this cabin comes with a 2-zone climate control only, and it's primarily the front seat occupants that it wants to pamper. The front seats are comfortably large and roomy, and the cushioning is comfortable for long-distance journeys. Because the 2 Series is targeted at those with a younger bent of mind, it's got a sporty interior. Of course, it's typical BMW, so you get a driver-centric dashboard, everything is angled towards the driver, and that's very good news. Adding further goodness to that effect is the presence of ambient lighting. You get the BMW Assistant, the voice assistant, and you also get gesture controls, which up until now were only restricted to the higher-end cars from BMW. You also get a digital instrumentation, again inspired by the BMW Z4, which means it gets the reverse tachometer. You can also specify the car with a heads-up display. It's an optional extra. And then you also get this infotainment screen. It's touchscreen. It's not the biggest in the business, but it is very crisp, very easy to read because it is angled towards the driver, and it's got a very slick response as well. What I also like is it gets wireless Apple CarPlay, which means you also get a wireless charger, and I really like the placement of it. As of now, the BMW 2 Series is only offered in India with a diesel engine. It's the familiar 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. It's in the familiar 190 PS tune as well, and in this little package, it's quite explosive. The transversely mounted diesel has exceptional refinement levels, and the 220D M Sport tested here managed a 0 to 100 sprint of 7.7 seconds in our test. You wouldn't really have to look at the spec sheet or really have more talent than these onboard electronics to know that this is a front-wheel driven car. Now that is something that has upset a lot of purists in the past as well. Every time BMW does a front-wheel driven car, we've seen that with the X1. However, with the new age electronics, it's actually not that bad a thing. The engine is mated to a piece of tech that BMW calls the ARB, or Actuator Contiguous Wheel Slip Limitation System, which essentially controls understeer that results out of excessive power or torque that is fed to the front wheels. It is a common problem with front-wheel driven cars, but with new age electronics that can work faster than ever and using new age sensors, the car's ECU can prevent or preempt excessive understeer, meaning you don't have to be too measured with the throttle all the time. I quite like the way the gearbox is tuned and the way it responds to changing throttle inputs, whether you're driving in the city, out on the highway, or on the twisties. It feels a little bit more responsive in its tuning compared to what we've experienced in the X1, and that's a very good feeling. The gearbox also gets a coasting function when you're on the highway, and that essentially helps this car get a phenomenal fuel economy as well. This is of course a diesel, so compared to what the petrol would manage, it will certainly give you a better range and better economy. But I like how the gearbox has been tuned and how relaxed this engine runs. The gearbox isn't as intuitive as the ZF transmissions in the higher spec BMW sedans, but this icing unit seems to be tuned for slightly quicker responses than before. There are driving modes of course, but the most basic kit from the BMW universe. So you get the Eco Pro mode, you have the Comfort, and you have the Sport. Now why am I switching between modes if I'm on the twisty roads? Why am I not just sticking to the Sport mode? Well, that's because the power delivery in the Comfort mode is actually a lot cleaner and more linear as compared to what the Sport mode manages. There are some tight switchbacks around here on the roads that I'm driving where in the Sport mode the car tends to have a torque steer despite all those electronics, and that's sort of killing the fun. The Comfort mode still makes it a lot more enjoyable because you don't have that sudden surge of torque coming in. It doesn't feel a little too eager, a little too enthusiastic when you're driving around tight switchbacks. While the 2 Series is targeted for those with a sportier bent of mind, its suspension is set up for a relatively cushier ride. There are no adaptive dampers to firm things up, but I doubt if you will complain about the stock setup. I quite like the feel of the brakes, and even on speed breakers, which you're going to encounter often like I just did, it's not a big worry. What you have to be careful about are the low-profile wheels on poor road conditions, but these again are premium car tantrums one cannot avoid in India, and it is a caution that you have to exercise for being a part of the luxury club. In a nutshell then, the 2 Series is certainly a better buy than the CLA was because it has a sprightlier engine, better dynamics, and a more comfortable cabin. Furthermore, it has enough tech to keep you entertained and ensure that you don't feel shortchanged for the Bavarian badge. It is also more accessible than a BMW X1 diesel, which makes it a sweet deal that will attract a lot of newcomers to the brand.
We have a more detailed review of the BMW 2 Series Gran Coupe on our YouTube channel. If you have any comments or any queries regarding the car, you can drop in a line and Rohit will answer them for you on our page as well. Time for us to take a quick break here on the show. Coming up on the other side, we'll acquaint you with the iconic Land Rover Defender that's now in India. Welcome back here with us on Overdrive. Now, earlier this year, Land Rover had every intention to bring down the most iconic Defender to our shores. But because of the pandemic, they had to delay their plans by a couple of months. Well, the Defender is finally on our shores. You can get yourself the 5-door variant, the Defender 110, the Defender 90, which is the 3-door variant, will come to India by the first quarter of 2021. Bert got a chance to take a closer look at this SUV at a dealership, and here's his first impression.
Earlier this year, Land Rover India had announced plans, their intent to introduce the iconic Defender model in India. Of course, with the delays due to the pandemic, well, the car didn't come down earlier, but it's finally here. It's arrived on our shores. This is the Land Rover 110, the Defender 110, and the 110 essentially denotes the length of the wheelbase, which in this case, or rather when the Defender originally came out, was supposed to be 110 inches. But now, of course, it still retains that. It's just a little longer than the 110. This is about 118 inches in length, but still the 110 stays. The other variant that's coming to India as well, that Land Rover will be introducing in India, is the Defender 90, which is the shorter wheelbase version. Now this, of course, is the 5-door version. You can clearly see there are 2 doors on either side of the car, and of course the boot. But the shorter wheelbase version will be the 3-door version with 2 doors and the tailgate for that matter. Overall, this is a fairly sporty and rugged looking, very masculine looking SUV. I love the look of the new grille element out here with the LED headlamps and the driving lamps. Looks fairly rugged at the front end itself. Moving on to the sides, again, characteristic or other, some very similar touches to what you would see in the Range Rover as well, which is supposed to be the more premium luxury brand from Land Rover as well. Nonetheless, you see that clean finish, very, very smooth, strong, horizontal lines, the shoulder line, the waistline, all of these extremely, there are no sweeps, there are no curves, it's all very angular, rather very straight line. Still, looks fairly handsome, very attractive. Again, one of the characteristics of the Defender was the rear window elements, which have stayed on since the original Defender came out in 1983. It's been one of the signature design elements on the Defender. Now, of course, the Defender's abilities were off-road, and that's where it struck a chord amongst most people, because not only was it comfortable and luxurious inside, but it also had all the abilities that a traditional Land Rover was offering in its products at that point in time, and continues to do so even today. These cars are meant to go off-road in style, and the new Defender, the Defender 110, carries on with that legacy. Again, this right now sits on Goodyear Wrangler tires, and these are 255/60, and these are 20-inch wheels and tires. Now, these are an 80 pattern, which means again this will be able to go almost every terrain. Hardcore off-roaders, you're never going to take something of this sort, hardcore off-roading in any case in this country, but these tires are good enough to get you almost anywhere that you would want to go. It's a fairly Spartan cabin, very nicely executed. Again, the straight line themes continue inside this interior as well. You can see it again in the line of the dashboard, in the lines of the center console, even on the steering wheel for that matter. It's a very nice transformer-ish kind of a look, looks fairly Lego-like for that matter, but it's a very impressive design and finish that they have applied to the Defender. Quite a few practical and innovative touches, like this small space out here where you can store your phone, and it's got a charging point, a USB charging point. So pretty innovative out there. You've got a cubby hole over here on either side of the dashboard. You've got lots of storage spaces all over. The center console, again, it's vacant at the bottom, so you can put in certain larger elements in here. You've also got storage spaces in here, and of course cup holders right there. So plenty of storage spaces. This is a full-time four-wheel drive SUV, again with the terrain response too. That's the latest generation of terrain response that Land Rover has to offer on their SUVs. There's a host of things that is capable of doing, lots of off-road equipment in addition. Now, principally what has changed also is this new infotainment screen. It's not a large element, but it looks very impressive. Clarity is fantastic, the colors are brilliant, looks very premium for that matter. Land Rover continues to offer its rear view mirror, which also converts into a screen. This has got a camera mounted at the rear, and of course that displays the image or whatever is happening on the road on the screen right here on this rear view mirror. Panoramic sunroof extending from the front all the way up to the rear behind. Fit and finish is just brilliant, like any other Land Rover or Range Rover for that matter. So it feels very premium, it feels well built. I like the quality of the plastics also, soft touch plastics, especially on the dashboard, in the upper portion of the dashboard out here. Here leather finish on this, leather finish on the storage compartments and the seats. Again, fantastic fit and finish and feel to it. This current Defender, well, it's certainly not in easy access, at least not affordable access to a lot of people. Goes fairly up the price ladder. 70 lakhs initially for the 90, and then going up to about 76 lakhs for the 110, and upwards going all the way up to about 87 lakhs ex-showroom for the 110, depending on the variant and the trim level that you select. There are 5 variants available in the Defender range, both on the 90 and the 110. The one difference that the 110 gets over the 90 is, of course, air suspension. That's the only critical or the largest, most significant difference between the 110 and the 190. So this is the 2-litre petrol engine. You've got about 300 horsepower and 400 Newton meters of torque, which is more than enough to do almost any job, whether it's on-road or off-road for that matter. This is, of course, mated to an automatic transmission, and then there's also the 4x4 drivetrain, full-time 4x4-wheel drive drivetrain, along with the terrain response 2 system. Here's what I do like. They've got a grab handle, which you can utilize to step into the rear seat. You've got an armrest when there aren't 3 people seated in the rear bench. The seat was adjusted to my position, and as you can see, there's plenty of space again for whoever's sitting here in this rear bench. All the controls, you've got additional charging points out here, and the controls for all the AC functions are available right here on these knobs. 2 vents right available over here. In addition, the 110 will be offered with the state-of-the-art Meridian sound system, which Range Rover and Land Rover also offer, and some of their other models. So what I do like about this is that there are lots of areas where sunlight is allowed to penetrate this cabin, which gives it that sense of roominess, gives it that sense of space, airiness, which is a very, very impressive design element. If you look at the roof over here, you've got small porticos that allow light to filter into the cabin on either side, apart from just the sunroof. At the rear, we have the spare wheel, which is mounted on the tailgate, and this opens sideways, and there you can see the boot. Enormous boot space with everything that you need to jack up the wheel right under there. So this, in a nutshell, is the Defender 110. Bookings are open, and of course car deliveries will begin pretty soon. There have been certain delays with the 90, of course, and that will come out later in 2020 or in the first quarter of 2021. But for now, we've got just the 110 on sale in India.
We had a very interesting discussion earlier this week on the Overdrive Digital Show about how these CBO models tend to be priced pretty expensive when they come down to our shows, which kind of works as a deterrent for most of the prospective buyers to take these premium SUVs off-road to do what they're actually meant to do. These SUVs are then treated as lifestyle vehicles right here in India. You can catch up with that discussion across our various social media platforms. The show has been uploaded online. We'll take a quick break here on the show. On the other side, we'll acquaint you with Honda's latest roadster. Overdrive. Now, just a couple of days ago, Honda launched their first ever roadster motorcycle in the country. They priced it at 1.85 lakh rupees and they're calling it the Highness CB350. Now, this motorcycle goes up against the likes of the Royal Enfield Classic 350 and it is available via Honda's premium big wing dealership. Here's Aditya Chatterjee getting you all the details.
Honda is planning to launch the Rebel 300. Now this was a speculation for a very long time. Now Honda has not launched the Rebel 300. What it has done has rebelled against the Classic 350, a model that has single-handedly brought tremendous success to Royal Enfield and has dominated the segment for more than a decade now. Now Honda has decided to challenge this with its all-new motorcycle, which is called the Highness or the Highness CB350. Now there are these three things that Honda is banking on with the CB350 against its rivals. One is the legacy of CB brand. Second is a lot of segment rivaling features that will make the CB350 an even more appealing motorcycle compared to its rivals. And third is the smooth and refined performance. Now, design is a very subjective aspect, but look at the CB350 and you will realize and agree that it is an attractive looking motorcycle. Now, the reason for that is Honda has taken cues from the CB range of motorcycles that were seen in yesteryears. Now, what it gets is a round headlight, a voluptuous fuel tank, and a muscular proportion. Now, to get into the details, this is a 15-liter fuel tank. That is a new LED retro headlight, and then there is a good and tasteful use of chrome throughout the motorcycle. The fender, fuel cap, the rear fender, the exhaust, the engine, mirrors. Now, there are a lot of chrome, but what I like is Honda has not gone very bling bling with the whole design, but then it has tastefully used chrome. Now, I'm not too sure if purists would like that or they would want more chrome on their modern classic. Now, the Honda CB350 is available in two variants, the DLX Pro and the DLX. What you see here is the DLX Pro. Now, what separates these two variants is this little screen here. Now, the DLX Pro comes with Honda's Smart Voice Assist system. Now, this is basically a system where you can pair your smartphone with the motorcycle and access telephony, navigation and music. What you need to do is download an app that Honda will give you, and then you can control navigation and all those functions through the buttons that are placed here. Now, this is a segment first. Now, did you even imagine an Honda motorcycle in India to sound like that, with a thump? Now, Honda tells us that thump actually played a big role in development of this engine. The 348cc single-cylinder long-stroke engine that puts out 21 PS of power and 30 Nm of torque. The power rating is similar, but what gives the CB350 an edge over the Royal Enfield with 2 Nm is the torque rating, which is the best in this segment.
For reduced vibrations and a refined performance from a long-stroke engine, Honda has equipped this motor with a counterbalancer. Further, it gets assist and slip clutch that offers smooth shifts while reducing clutch lever operation for a fatigue-free experience.
Now, underpinning the CB350 is this, the half duplex cylinder frame, and then you get telescopic front and twin hydraulic in the rear. Now, Honda tells us that the position of the engine has been done in such a way that it's lower compared to its rivals, which makes sure that the handling and the maneuverability of the CB350 will be better than its rivals. But in addition to the position of the engine, the CB350 has a curb weight of 181 kgs, which makes sure that the CB has an edge over the Classic by over 13 kgs. Now, imagine the dividends and benefits of that when you're riding through city traffic on the CB versus your Classic. Alright, so now I'm on board the CB350. I am 6'1" and I am a large guy. Now, what I like about the CB350 is how nice and accommodating it feels, even for someone who's as big and as tall as me. Now, the riding position is almost upright, and the handlebar, the whole position, the riding stance seems to be very comfortable. Now, of course, this is a showroom and the motorcycle is parked, but I have a feeling that when you're traveling in the city, this should offer for a comfortable experience, even when you're on the saddle for longer hours. the CB350 will be sold through Honda's premium arm, the Bigwig India network, which also sells motorcycles like the Africa Twin and even the Hypersport CB range. Now, what needs to be seen is how does the CB350 establish itself against its rivals, mainly the Classic 350, and if Indians show their love that they have shown with the Classic 350 to the CB350. Now, Honda has also told us that they are open to exports provided the CB350 establishes itself in a very strong way in the Indian market. But then the CB350 also complies with international emission norms, which means exporting the CB350 should be possible for Honda. Now that brings us to the final aspect, the pricing. Now the Honda CB350 will be priced at 1.90 lakh ex-showroom. Now that is the base price for the DLX, while the DLX Pro will be priced at a premium over it. Here's a quick look at where the rivals stand against the CB350. Now I'm sure all of you want to re-hear the thump of the CB350, and for everyone, here it is.
With that, it's time for us to wrap up this week's edition of Overdrive. But remember, you can stay in touch with the team through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We go live every Friday at 6 p.m. as well. So you can catch up with us on our various social media platforms with any queries that you might have. We'll see you next week. Until then, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.
This is